The biggest mistake women make with their health is living on a 24-hour clock when their body runs on a 28-day one. I'm Alisa Vitti, the pioneer of cycle syncing and women's hormone expert, and here's why that matters. If you're thinking that you're biohacking and you're a female, cycle syncing is the fundamental practice of biohacking that you must apply to your unique female biology. You're not a smaller version of a guy. You have two biological rhythms that govern your reality, and only optimizing or biohacking for your circadian rhythm and ignoring your infradian rhythm puts you at risk for greater strain and stress on your endocrine system and your ovarian ecosystem. I hope you found it enlightening. Cycle syncing is the foundation of your health practice as a hormonal woman. It's something that is essential for caring for this fifth vital sign, and it is clinically shown to eliminate your PMS dramatically within a very short period of time. I've spent years helping women understand their hormones, and one of the most powerful shifts I've seen is what happens when you start working with your cycle instead of against it. It's not just about fewer symptoms, it's about feeling more like yourself again, more steady, more energized, more at home in your body. We studied cycle syncing, and 92% of women had less PMS in just 60 days. If you're curious, you can try it for free. Just download the MyFlow app on iTunes or Google Play and use the code FREEMONTH. Welcome back to the Ovary Club. I'm Alisa Vitti, your host, and it's a special one because this topic is the foundation of something I've dedicated many years of my career to, and the topic is cycle syncing. This method is a method that I created over, 20 years ago to really help women start to align with the hormonal needs of each phase of their cycle. And that's a brand new concept that has revolutionized so many of our lives. It's really gone viral since the publication of my book in 2020. And I want to break it all down for you today. You know, most women are told that their bodies run on the same 24-hour clock that men's bodies do. And this is just not the case in our reproductive years. Women operate on this infradian rhythm, which is something that I revealed for the first time in the book, In the Flow. And it's roughly a 28-day cycle that impacts way more than just when you ovulate and menstruate. It impacts your metabolism, your brain, your stress response system, and how we think and feel. And there's so much to unpack. This infradian rhythm explains why you don't feel the same in the first half of the cycle versus the second half of the cycle. And it doesn't mean that anything is wrong. It's just that you are designed to feel different, and it's your biology. And I want you to understand exactly how it works so you can optimize not only your hormonal health and get rid of symptoms, but you can start to just really go after the life that you were designed to have. So cycle syncing at its 10,000-foot view is really just aligning how you eat, how you exercise, and how you live with the four distinct phases of your cycle. And when you do this, you stop kind of working against the current of these hormonal patterns, and instead you start kind of flowing with them, right? This idea of being in peak states of flow is something that happens more often when you start practicing the cycle syncing method. Obviously, the results are things like less PMS, and we're going to talk a little bit about the study that we did on the cycle syncing method to prove how it is, in fact, one of the most effective things to reduce PMS. It gives you better moods, improved energy, and a sense of just owning and operating and accepting your unique female biology in a way that we haven't been able to before. So today I'm going to break down exactly what cycle syncing is, why it matters so much for your health beyond your cycle, and the simple ways that you can start using the cycle syncing method today. Before we dive in, of course, please don't forget to follow the Ovary Club on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Every week, I'll be bringing you the insights, the information, and the tools to help you reclaim your hormonal health and feel at home in your body. Okay. What is cycle syncing? Cycle syncing is the method that I created to help support the body's changing hormonal and metabolic and stress response patterns and all of the different things that our different cycle phases affect. And it's governed by that infradian rhythm. And I uncovered this rhythm over a decade ago, and it just changed absolutely everything about my approach to how women should be taking care of themselves. Again, it's built on 3 pillars: food, fitness, and focus. It's designed to keep blood sugar stable throughout the cycle, which is essential for good ovarian function and progesterone output. It helps to reduce overall symptom burden, so the number of PMS symptoms you have and the severity of those symptoms. And it supports your natural hormonal shifts so that you can leverage all of the different ways that those hormonal shifts are affecting your brain chemistry to your advantage in your life. This is fundamental. If you're thinking that you're biohacking and you're a female, cycle syncing is the fundamental practice of biohacking that you must apply to your unique female biology. You're not a smaller version of a guy. You have 2 biological rhythms that govern your reality, and only optimizing or biohacking for your circadian rhythm and ignoring your infradian rhythm puts you at risk for greater strain and stress on your endocrine system and your ovarian ecosystem. And unfortunately, because women have been left out of so much fitness, nutrition, and medical research, we've overlooked this. And despite what those reigning theories are, especially in the biohacking conversation, again, women are just not smaller versions of men. You need to optimize to your ecosystem. Men run on a 24-hour clock. Women shift phasically throughout the cycle. And these distinct hormonal patterns require specific types of self-care. If we force ourselves to live the same way day in and day out, from the amount of calories we eat, to the types of workouts we're doing, to the intensity and duration of those workouts, to even the way we organize our projects throughout the day, this fundamentally disrupts our infradian rhythm. Just like staying up all night disrupts your circadian rhythm. And we know that's not good. But what does it do when you're disrupting your infradian rhythm? It leads to dysregulated insulin and cortisol. It leads to suppressed progesterone production. It reduces your fertility. It ages the ovary faster, right? It increases inflammation in the body. It really creates much more symptoms and suffering, regardless of where you are in your perimenopause journey, whether it's more PMS or more perimenopause. You've got to be cycle syncing to support this infradian rhythm. Now, this sounds like a lovely theory and, oh, it's so wonderful, and I wish I could synchronize all of those things to the phases of my cycle, but it's probably just a nice to have, right? Wrong. In fact, I appreciate the skepticism. After the book came out in 2020, so many millions of women around the world have dedicated their Instagram and TikTok channels to documenting their cycle syncing lifestyle. And some skeptics were out there saying, well, where's the science? How do we know this works? It's like a nice idea, but really, is it going to, it makes sense, right? Anytime we talk about anything that's specifically special to women, and especially about the taboo subject of menstruation, there's a little bit of just societal pushback. But the reality is, we now have that research. I just concluded the first ever frankly historic clinical trial on the cycle syncing method and its impact on PMS. I wanted to know specifically, how can we measure the impact of this method on symptom burden and symptom severity in the luteal phase? And we found some incredible things. Big takeaway: the cycle syncing method is now clinically shown to reduce PMS by 86%. For 92% of the women who participated in the study within 3 months. That is unprecedented. Almost 80% of women suffer from PMS at some point in their life. And there's no real treatment for it at all. I mean, even birth control some studies show it's only 50% effective for about half of the women who use it for that purpose, about 48% of the women in a small study that was done. So we're talking about a natural intervention that works really fast. So if you have PMS this cycle, within 2 to 3 cycles, you don't have to have any symptoms really at this point. It's really now up to you, and it's in your control how much you experience PMS. And that's the best news I could give any woman. Some fun stats from the study. By the end of the 3rd month, 94% were reporting that they had more stable blood sugar. 80% were reporting that they had less cramps, less painful periods. 89% reported better moods. When we were looking at the data in the MyFlow app, which is the app I built, it's the only official cycle syncing method app, we had an 86% reduction in symptoms over 3 months. We had a doubling of no symptom days. And the best part is that, you don't have to be rigid and a perfectionist with this method. We tracked how much women were using the method over 5 key factors of the day. And it turns out that they were only being about 70% compliant with the method each day. So that means you can kind of just do it somewhat, and you're still going to get these incredible results. So all of this to share that it's not just a social media trend, it's backed by real science, and it's really, really effective. You do not have to suffer with your period, and your infradian rhythm does need your attention and care, and the cycle syncing method is the best way to do that. So let's break down the 4 phases so you can get to know these different aspects of your cycle and what you need to be doing in each phase. So let's start with the follicular phase. I call this the first phase of the cycle, and I know that is going to freak a few of you out because, day 1 we're conditioned to label as the first day of our bleed. And that is useful, and you can still call that day 1. But the bleeding phase is the culmination. Just because it's day 1, I want you to just think about how it energetically feels. When you go through your period, does the bleeding part feel like a new beginning? No, it feels like the completion of the whole cycle, that particular month cycle. So the follicular phase is the first phase of the cycle, even though our medical jargon around this is a little confusing. You just orient yourself the way that feels good to you. What is happening? Estrogen, which had been at its lowest point during the bleed, now starts to come back. It's gently rising. It's developing it's waking up some of the follicles on the ovary. It's just kind of like getting things warmed up. It's the welcoming committee. How do you feel when this estrogen is doing that? You feel renewed. You feel curious, you feel energized, you're interested in trying something new, you're getting started as well. There is a little bit of this macro and microcosmic fractal biology here at work, not to totally nerd out, but just in case you haven't gotten this memo yet, that is 100% my favorite thing to do. And what's happening on the ovary is also a reflection of what's happening, let's say, with where you're at cognitively, right? And so you're interested, you're creative, you're motivated, you want to start something, take on new projects, you have ideas. So that's kind of what's going on in terms of how that's affecting your personality and your interests. So what are the habits that support this phase? Well, in this phase, I love women there's obviously the famous food chart in chapter 4 of In the Flow. So obviously there's the now very famous, well-circulated food chart from chapter 4 of In the Flow of which foods to select from each phase. And so you can reference that. You can also download the MyFlow app for free and get yourself oriented with all of those foods to choose from. But I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of kind of what the energy of the food is that you want to focus on in the food preparation. And then you can dive deeper after the episode. But think about eating fresh, lighter, prepared foods, steamed, broiled, not like a heavy preparation. That's really great. Helps your digestion is slower at this phase. You've just come out of the menstrual phase. So, you just kind of want to take it easy and use lighter foods and do refer to the list, which is based in traditional Chinese medicine. So it's not a random list. It really is about aligning with how the body responds well to different foods. In each phase. From a workout perspective, again, metabolism is slightly slower in this phase, and resting cortisol is slightly lower. So you can do lots of cardio this phase if that's your jam, right? You can do long cardio sessions. You can go to a class. You can like jam out for an hour in one of your favorite boot camp classes, whatever you want to do. That is great. Then, from a project focus point of view, this is the time to do all of your project planning. Sit down with your calendar. Look ahead at them. And again, it doesn't have to be a perfect calendar month because your follicular phase could happen the third week of the month. But your creative, energetic creative month starts the first day after your bleed. So look at the next 30 days, right? Orient yourself around your cycle. What do you want to accomplish between your follicular phase and the day one of your bleed, right? What are the things that are important to you? What do you want to achieve, right? And map it out. You have all the ideation happening for you really easily at this stage of the cycle. Okay. Then we move on to the ovulation phase. Everyone's favorite. I know it's such an easy phase. It's the shortest though. It's only like, there's a halo effect because of the estrogen surge, but it's really just a 48-hour window, but I give it like 4 to 5 days for that halo effect. Okay. Estrogen is peaking. LH is surging, FSH is surging, fertility is at its highest, testosterone is peaked, your libido is on full charge, right? All of these things make you feel confident and social and magnetic. In fact, that super surge of estrogen hyperstimulates the verbal and social centers of your brain in this phase. So certainly, we're going to use that to our advantage when we get to the focus section. So keep that in mind. If you've ever wanted to ask me your own hormone questions, the Ovary Club Insiders is where you can do that. You'll get access to private podcast episodes where I answer real member questions with clear, science-backed guidance you can actually use. Join us at alisavitti.com/insiders. So what are the 3 cycle syncing habits for this phase? So from a food perspective, again, you don't have to eat as many calories as you're going to have to eat in the coming luteal phase because your metabolism is still slower. But we want to use food strategically to address that estrogen surge. Some of you experience ovulation and it doesn't feel so great because of all that estrogen, and your body might be challenged in clearing it or metabolizing it, breaking it down. So we use food in the cycle syncing method here to help the liver and the large intestine metabolize and excrete all of that estrogen. So you're going to think raw foods, fresh foods, foods that are rich in glutathione and selenium and vitamins that give the liver the building blocks they need to go through their 3 phases of detoxification, so that it can package up that estrogen and get it out through the large intestine. All the fiber, soluble and insoluble from the foods you're going to be choosing from the ovulatory list really help with your bowel movements as well. And because your metabolism is slower, again, you can eat these more salad-oriented types of meals and you're not going to feel hangry a couple of hours later, okay? So you can go with your flow metabolically in each phase and it really works to your advantage. From a workout perspective, again, we're still in a place where, you have that lower resting cortisol, so you can do HIIT workouts, you can do cardio, and don't worry, we're going to talk about strength training in a second. But if from a cardio perspective, this is still a safe time to do whatever amount of cardio feels good to you. From a focus perspective and project planning, remember that hyperstimulation of the verbal and social centers of your brain. Please plan out as many networking, socializing, outward-facing activities as you can during the ovulatory phase because it is effortless for you to be doing this in this phase. Your hormones are hardwiring you to feel this, any activity that's aligned with this in a low stress way. To you in this cycle phase, socializing feels pleasurable. But let's check back in with you, let's say late luteal phase in like 10 days, and any event that you committed to in your late luteal phase where you have to go do like a networking event, you're literally going to say, "Ugh, I wish I hadn't committed to that. I want to cancel." And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just poor planning, right? I map out all my events based on my cycle phases so that I can really optimize my energetic stress management, right? So I do more outward facing things in the first half of my cycle because that's what my biology is facilitating. And then I do more inward facing things in the second half because that supports keeping my stress levels low and making sure that I don't burn out. Because if you're always out output, right? Giving out social events, all of that, that leads to that burnout that can start to erode your hormonal aging process, your ovarian ecosystem, your fertility, put you into perimenopause earlier. So cycle syncing is a protective practice as well because it forces you to have healthy boundaries around all your projects. Okay, so that's the ovulatory phase. Let's talk about the luteal phase. It's no one's favorite because everyone has PMS, which is a hormonal imbalance. And if you didn't learn about that, please watch episode 3 so you can learn all about how to manage your PMS and what it means in your 20s. But quick and dirty on it here is PMS is not normal. It's an indicator that your estrogen and progesterone levels are imbalanced in this phase, meaning you don't have enough progesterone in the luteal phase to keep you symptom-free. You should not have PMS. And now you can feel very confident that once you start your cycle syncing practice, that you will, within 3 months, eliminate your PMS. So that's wonderful news. You can really just trust that this process will get rid of that. And that's a good thing because the luteal phase is my favorite phase. Why? Because when you have access to all that progesterone in your brain chemistry, it has the most calming and focusing effect in your life. So that means like you can sit down and do your deep work. It's also the longest phase of the cycle. So interesting from a productivity perspective, you have 10 to 12 days with all this progesterone. I love to do writing. I love to do creative work. I love to do things that really require me to be with my own thoughts and to like just produce and get things done. It's really my favorite phase. It also makes it easier to sleep, to deal with stress. As long as you're managing all of your projects in alignment with this phase, it should be a wonderful time of the month. From a food perspective and a metabolic perspective, this is a time where things shift. So what's happening in this phase? Progesterone rises and falls, estrogen rises and falls. The egg that has been released in the ovulatory phase has this little sac that's left over called the corpus luteum, the remaining body, and it produces all this progesterone for you. It's really amazing. You feel more inward, more detail-oriented because of all this progesterone, and you have slightly lower energy. Your resting cortisol is higher, and your metabolism speeds up. We're going to talk about how that impacts what you should be eating and how you should be working out next. But from a focus perspective, this is the time where I schedule all my deep work and I say no to as many meetings and social events as possible. Okay, so from a food perspective, your metabolism has sped up. Studies show that you need 249 more calories per day to keep your blood sugar stable. Now, the cycle syncing method obviously factors this in. So in the luteal phase, in the MyFlow app, you're going to be given guidance and recipes that front load your body with slower burning carbohydrates that make sure that you're eating more frequently throughout the day. We really want to protect our blood sugar stability so that we can make a lot of progesterone. Anytime you have long stretches of time where you're not eating and blood sugar drops, we have to then recruit cortisol to talk to our stored fat cells to release some of that glucose. And all of that cortisol that we need to produce, then, we start to make less progesterone. So it's like this very interesting vicious cycle that we need to get out of. And that's why we have to eat much more strategically in the luteal phase. So breakfast should not look like it did in the ovulatory phase with like a smoothie and a salad for lunch and a fruit for a snack. No. I want you to think like sweet potatoes for breakfast with scrambled eggs or avocado toast with smoked salmon for breakfast. And then you want to really make sure you're eating every 3 to 4 hours. An afternoon snack in the luteal phase is not a piece of fruit or a quick bar. Think of it like a small amount, like a leftover part of your lunch that you didn't finish. And lunch should be one of those big like Buddha bowls with some brown rice and beans and cooked kale and a nice creamy dressing of something, with fat content in it and some protein. You want to eat robustly to protect your hormones in this phase. From a workout perspective, we don't actually find in the research that doing extended forms of cardio is advantageous in this phase because of that cortisol shift. What can happen is you start to tax the adrenals, and research shows that it can turn on fat storage and muscle wasting. So what do we do instead? Just focus on strength training, right? You should be strength training all month long. But in the luteal phase, that can really be your main exercise if you haven't had a chance to get to it in the prior phases. I strength train every phase of the cycle, and it's wonderful for every phase of the cycle. But in the luteal phase, it's a great time to do that. You do have access to some testosterone here, so you can make some muscle gains as well. And from a cardio perspective, you don't have to give up cardio in the luteal phase. You just want to do slightly less, and you don't want to do that kind of high intensity type of cardio. So you can do a whole bunch of walking on an incline. You can do, 20 to 30 minutes on a machine, right? That is perfectly fine. But the main aspect of your workout should be that strength training. And of course, like I said, from a focus perspective, get all your projects done. Do the things that need doing, and you're going to feel so calm and supported. Okay, last phase of the cycle is the menstrual phase. Isn't it confusing that we call the whole thing menstruation and then the bleeding phase is the menstrual phase? I really don't like the fact that we have such imprecise language around these different phases of the cycle. So I'm inviting you to do what I do. I call the whole thing the menstrual cycle, and then I call the week that I'm bleeding, I call that the bleeding phase because, every other name is named after the sort of function and structure of what's happening. The follicular phase is named after the follicles on the ovary developing. The ovulatory phase is named after the egg leaving the ovary. The luteal phase is named after the corpus luteum developing that progesterone. So why don't we call the last phase of the cycle the bleeding phase? Because that's what's happening, right? We might as well call it what it is so that we are less confused. So anyway, in this phase, what is happening? In order for the lining of your uterus to be shed, for bleeding to start, all of your hormones, estrogen and progesterone, have to reach their lowest blood serum concentration. So that's what's happening. And this definitely has an impact on our brain chemistry and everything else, as all of our sex hormones affect way more than just ovulation and menstruation. So what does that mean, all of these drop off in these hormones? It just means that you're going to feel your most inward. You shouldn't necessarily feel like you're falling off a cliff with your energy and your mood. You shouldn't have crying fits or feel like you need to be laid up on the couch. This is not what, I know that's sort of like the kind of jokes that we tell about our menstrual experience, but you should feel good every day of the cycle. You should not have huge cramps at all. That's a whole other conversation we can have in another episode about what causes cramps and how you can fix them within one cycle. Very easy to do. It's just about changing the dietary fats that you take in. But there is a really cool thing that happens here that I don't think enough of us know about, which is what happens in our brain chemistry. So we have this bundle of nerve fibers that sits right between the right and the left hemispheres of our brain called the corpus callosum. And during the menstrual phase, because of the downregulation in sex hormones, we actually communicate across the corpus callosum the most at any other time of the month. What does this mean for you? How do you apply this practically? Well, what it means is that the right and the left hemispheres of your brain are communicating maximally. And that's something that you can take advantage of for your life strategic planning. So that means that you can look at the facts of anything that's happening in your life. I kind of do a little life bucket analysis every menstrual phase. So I look at, how's everything going with career? What are the facts around my marriage? What's going on with my girls, my daughters? What's happening with my self-care routine? Just these big buckets. And I just kind of list out the facts. And then I also lean into how am I feeling about those facts? Everything feel good? Am I feeling like I'm moving myself and those relationships in the right direction? Or am I upset about something? Am I unsettled about something? Do I need to make an adjustment? And this is where I'll sit down and do a little journaling. I'm not a big journaler, but during my bleeding phase, I have so much to say and I get it out on paper so that I can really document what needs to be addressed. And of course, I take all that input and information and I apply it into my next follicular phase strategic, calendar session, right? What do I want to work on? What are these objectives? They come from my menstrual phase analysis of my life. So that's my big favorite habit of my menstrual phase. Let's talk about the 3 cycle syncing habits outside. That's the third one is doing your little journaling. But the first one around food, this is the time where from a TCM perspective, your body is the coldest, your uterus is the coldest. So I love to lean into your using warming foods, broth, stew, cooked, animal proteins. We need mineral-rich foods because studies actually show we do lose iron and other minerals at a greater rate during the menstrual phase. Obviously, we are shedding a small organelle, the endometrium, so we do need to replenish. And you want to use food strategically and intentionally, right? So have that hamburger, have that steak, or if you're a meat eater, and replenish your body. If not, use sea vegetables, mineral broths to help you replenish. And keep warm. Wear socks to bed. Yes, you can do it even in the summertime. Take warm showers. Don't be drinking ice water. Little things that anybody who has worked with an acupuncturist will say, oh, yes, I remember my acupuncturist saying things like this. There's a lot of value in staying warm to help with preventing of cramps and other things. One other super fun thing that I do on my period, which I talk about whenever I'm a guest on other people's podcasts and they ask me, like, what does the period queen do to celebrate her period? I mean, it really is a gift. I went from the age of 12 to 22 without a regular cycle. So just to give you perspective, my PCOS journey was pretty intense. I didn't start menstruating until I was just a few months shy of my 16th birthday. I had 3 natural periods between the age of 16 and 22. And then 2 of them were, the other 2 that I had were induced with synthetic progesterone, which were horrendous. So I only had 5 bleeds between the age of 16 and 22. I treasure my period, probably more than anyone else you'll ever meet. I also really love your period more than anyone else on this planet. And I want you to love it even just a fraction as much as I do. And I hope today you're starting to think that way. But what I do, because I don't take it for granted that I have a period, is that on the first day of my bleed, I kind of have a little mini celebration, as if the queen was visiting, so to speak, like a little visiting dignitary. I have a certain teacup that's like very fancy, and I put my nettle tea in there, my red raspberry leaf tea in there, and I drink that during the day. I like to wear loose clothing, so I end up usually wearing a maxi dress, something that makes me feel beautiful and comfortable. And I just take the day to myself. If it's a work day, I reschedule meetings. If it's a weekend, I lay low and, just kind of hang out. I just want the day to feel low stress. It's not because I'm tired. It's not because I'm in pain. It's just because my body is doing a lot. It's expelling this lining, and I want to just kind of give it a little space that first day to not have to focus on too many other things, and so that I can enjoy it because, like I said, I'm almost 49. There'll be a few years left where I get to menstruate and enjoy that process. And I don't want to rush through it. I don't want to be so busy in my life that I rush through it and I miss all those moments, because I have had many, many conversations with postmenopausal women who lament that they didn't celebrate their cycle more, and they feel a sense of loss after menopause, not from a hormonal perspective, but from the sense of like, oh, it was special in its own way, and I didn't know to treat it as such, and I wish that I could go back and do that. So we can learn from each other, right? We don't all have to reinvent this story and as a wheel, so to speak. So I also invite you to make that first day a little special for yourself. Wear something fun, have a nice cup of tea, do something that feels good for you. So now that you're totally aware of the different phases of your cycle, what the hormones are, what they mean, and what are the optimal cycle syncing practices for each phase, you might be feeling a little overwhelmed, and I don't want you to. I want to give you kind of a cycle syncing method, kind of like roadmap to get yourself into the practice without feeling like you have to do it all or be perfect at it, because the studies show you don't have to be that compliant to get these big results. So where do we start when we want to start our cycle syncing practice? First thing first is you got to know where you are in your cycle, so you have to start tracking your cycle. I would highly recommend that you use the MyFlow app because it gives you all of the cycle syncing guidance based on the cycle phases that you're tracking in the app, but it also gives you specific guidance on your symptoms. And this is all guidance based on if you were working with me, let's say as a private client, I would be looking at what does acne mean in the luteal phase versus acne in your ovulatory phase, and giving you different guidance on what foods to eat to address that. So it's a really special app. It has the same circle icon as the In the Flow book. So make sure you download the correct My Flow app. The word my has to be in front of it. And start tracking. Being aware of each phase of your cycle is the first step to the cycle syncing process. Then, to avoid overwhelm, I would invite you to start with one of the three pillars, right? So there's food, there's fitness, and there's focus. Pick one. Maybe you want to just start with the focus piece. You want to kind of start orienting your socializing and your deep work and your progress and all of those and projects based on those cycle phases. That's great. A lot of people find that they like to start with the fitness piece because it's kind of an easy switch to make, even though it can feel a little confronting to give up some of that cardio length of time in the luteal phase. You're going to feel so much better when you do it. And that's a great place to start. And then when you're ready, you can start layering in like one meal a day. Like maybe you just layer in your breakfast as your cycle synced meal of the day. And then you slowly add more to it. Like keep it easy. The app also gives you recipes that you can customize. You can say, I've got XYZ in my pantry. What recipe should I make? That's based on this cycle phase. And it will tell you what to make so that you don't have to kind of figure it out. I tried to make this as easy as possible for everyone within the MyFlow app ecosystem. The third thing that I would have you do in this process is to give yourself permission to like really feel what that phase is asking of you. If the phase is asking of you like, I just really feel like going out, go out. If the phase is like, I just really want to rest and give yourself 2-3 cycles where you're actually giving yourself permission to live in the flow of these cycle phase impacts on your mood and your energy to just see how you feel. Does your PMS reduce? I mean, I know that your PMS is going to reduce, but you should see it for yourself. How does this impact your PMS? How does this impact your mood and energy throughout the cycle? The goal of this practice is for you to feel even keel throughout the month, not to feel like you currently likely feel, which is really good and energized and sexy and wonderful in the first half of the cycle, and then you feel like a totally different person in the second half of the cycle. That is a sign of an imbalance. That's a red flag. Your cycle is your fifth vital sign, as we learned in episode 3. So you don't want to just like accept that as normal. You want to say, oh, that's something I've got to really smooth out. And the cycle syncing practice will smooth that out for you. I feel good every day of the month. I might feel slight differences in my energy, but relatively speaking, it's like this. You don't want these big swings. And that's really what I want you to do. And the last thing is, remember, the study that we just did showed that you only have to be about 70% compliant with the method to get these huge results in PMS. So please do not be a perfectionist, like type A cycle syncing practitioner, right? I want you to make small shifts, be gentle with yourself, don't put pressure on yourself, don't add stress. This is not a diet. This is a method. This is something you would be doing for 3 to 4 decades of your life, your menstruating years. So this is something like a yoga practice. For any of you who have practiced yoga extensively, you know that every time you come to the mat, it's an opportunity to experience the nuance of that day's particular practice. The same could be said about cycle syncing. Every day is a new day to interact with your body, to adjust, to tweak, to refine, to be compassionate, to lean in, to give yourself permission to feel, to be a female in your unique biological experience. Be gentle with yourself and don't put any pressure on yourself to do it perfectly. I don't. I have been doing it the longest of anybody on the planet, but I don't do it perfectly. And it has paid off huge health benefits and I would say career benefits as well. All right. Let's recap the basics of this whole cycle syncing conversation that we've had today so you can get to practicing as soon as you are done listening. First, cycle syncing is about aligning with your infradian rhythm, not the male 24-hour clock, okay? Second, your cycle has 1, 2, 3, 4 phases. And you want to remember the follicular, the ovulatory, the luteal, and the menstrual or bleeding phase that each have their unique hormonal patterns that need a little support from your life. Number 3, the cycle syncing method has 3 pillars: food, fitness, and focus. When you align these with each cycle phase, you reduce your PMS symptoms, you boost your energy and your productivity, and you reduce stress. 4, the simplest way to start your cycle syncing practice is to make one small shift with one of those 3 pillars, like start with food or start with fitness or start with focus, and obviously start tracking where you are in your cycle so that you have that cycle awareness of, okay, it's time to make those shifts, and let the app do all the heavy lifting of what to eat. And there's workout videos in the app. There's ways to help you plan your projects. I mean, it's really all done there for you so that you can just start doing. You do it and let the app tell you what you need to be doing in each phase. That's it for today's episode of the Ovary Club. I hope you found it enlightening. Cycle syncing is the foundation of your health practice as a hormonal woman. It's something that is essential for caring for this 5th vital sign, and it is clinically shown to eliminate your PMS dramatically within a very short period of time. So I would say once you start engaging this method, you're never going to look at your cycle the same way, and you're never going to look at your life in the same way. Everything's going to start to just feel more like you. Instead of dreading your monthly cycle, you're going to come to see it as a blueprint that helps you optimize your energy, your productivity, and your balance. If this episode inspired you to give cycle syncing a try, please click follow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify so you never miss an episode. And if you take a moment, please leave a comment because it helps other women find the show so that more of us can start living in alignment with our hormones and living more powerfully. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am so excited for you to start your cycle syncing practice, and I can't wait to hear how it's transforming your period and your life.